I'm Morgan Hayes, 28 years old, standing frozen in my childhood home's living room. The birthday dinner atmosphere shifts as Dad hands me an envelope with a smirk. Mom, Tyler, and Amber watch with strange expressions, anticipation mixed with something darker. Opening it reveals a one-way ticket to Alaska. It's time you stopped being a burden, Dad announces coldly. Their faces show this isn't a joke, they've been planning this. What they don't realize as they try to discard me is that I'm worth $2.4 billion. Before I dive into this wild story, where are you watching from? If this family betrayal resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories of underestimated people coming out on top. Sometimes the people who should believe in you the most are the ones who see you're worth the least. The one-way ticket trembled in my hands as I stared at my family's smug faces. How had we reached this point? To understand the magnitude of this betrayal, you need to know my history. I graduated from MIT with dual degrees in computer science and business at 22. Always the academic overachiever. While there, I developed an algorithm that revolutionized how artificial intelligence processes natural language and makes predictions. By 24, I had founded my own tech company. By 25, I had sold it for $2.4 billion. And no one in my family knew. Not my father, Richard, a mid-level executive who constantly reminded me that Hayes men are providers while dismissing my computer hobby as frivolous. Not my mother, Stephanie, who nodded along with whatever Dad said, occasionally whispering that I should try harder to please him. Not my brother, Tyler, who turned every family dinner into a presentation of his moderate accomplishments at Dad's company. And certainly not my stepsister, Amber, who joined our family when I was 12, and had spent every moment since then ensuring I knew I didn't belong. Why keep my success secret? It started as a simple delay in sharing the news. I wanted to establish safeguards before the world knew about my wealth, but when I came home for Christmas after the sale, I overheard a conversation that changed everything. Morgan's wasting her potential, Dad had said to Mom in the kitchen. All that education, and she's freelancing? She needs to grow up and get a real job. She's always been the difficult one, Mom agreed. Not practical like Tyler. Something broke inside me that day. I decided to maintain the facade of struggling freelancer a little longer. I told myself it was a social experiment. Would my achievements ever be enough without the validation of money? Would they ever value me for myself? For 3 years, I lived modestly when visiting home, driving my old Toyota, wearing simple clothes, and deflecting questions about my work with vague answers about consulting projects. Meanwhile, I was running a billion-dollar investment portfolio, funding startups, and living in a penthouse in San Francisco. I kept waiting for them to show interest in my life, my passions, my ideas, anything beyond financial metrics of success. They never did. We've been patient enough. Dad continued at my birthday dinner, stabbing his fork into his steak. 28 years old and nothing to show for it. We're doing this because we love you, Mom added, not meeting my eyes. Tough love. Tyler smirked across the table. My company's expanding. I just made junior partner. What have you done this year, sis? She's been living off your parents' generosity, Amber interjected, the stepsister who had moved back home after her divorce. Some of us have real problems, Morgan. I sat silently, absorbing every word, every dismissive glance. The ticket to Alaska wasn't just a suggestion, it was an eviction. Dad had apparently arranged a job opportunity with his college roommate's logging company. Manual labor in the wilderness, far from their perfect family image. You'll thank us someday, Dad said firmly. We can't support your directionless life anymore. The irony nearly made me laugh. I had enough money to buy this house and everyone in it 1,000 times over. I had created technology that was changing industries worldwide. I employed thousands of people, but sitting there, watching them dismiss my entire existence, I faced a crossroads. Should I pull out my phone, make a call, and have my private jet pick me up on the front lawn? Should I reveal that the burden they were discarding was one of the richest self-made women in America? Or should I finally accept what I had known deep down for years, that these people would never truly see me, with or without billions? The morning after my disastrous birthday dinner, I woke to the sound of boxes being dragged across the hardwood floor outside my bedroom. Opening my door, I found all my belongings, the few I kept at my parents' house, packed in cardboard boxes labeled Morgan in my mother's neat handwriting. "Oh, you're up," Mom said, not looking surprised to find me standing there. She was dressed impeccably as always, her blonde hair perfectly styled, not a hint of remorse on her face. "Your father wants these out by noon." You've been planning this for a while, I said. It wasn't a question. She sighed, finally meeting my eyes. Morgan, we've been planning this for months. The ticket to Alaska isn't effective for 2 weeks, but your father thinks a clean break is best. A clean break. I repeated, the words hollow. As Mom walked away, I pulled out my phone and checked my banking app. Not my primary accounts, of course, but the small checking account I had maintained since college, the one my grandmother had set up for me. It showed a balance of 0. The notification tab revealed a transfer of the entire amount, nearly $30,000, to an account labeled Hayes Family. My hands shaking slightly, I called the cell phone company. As suspected, my line had been removed from the family plan yesterday. My health insurance through Dad's company policy had been terminated as well. I sat on my stripped bed, surrounded by boxes of my childhood, and tried to process the methodical way they had cut me off. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. Morgan? It's Uncle Warren. My father's younger brother stood in the doorway, his kind face creased with concern. Unlike the rest of the Hayes family, Uncle Warren had always been my defender. I just heard, he said, coming in and closing the door. Your father called me last night, told me about the Alaska plan. Let me guess, he wanted you to tell me what a great opportunity it is. Uncle Warren shook his head. No, he wanted me to know that they're telling everyone you've become mentally unstable and needed a fresh start away from bad influences. Has been calling around to local businesses where you might apply for jobs, telling them you're unreliable. The calculated nature of the betrayal knocked the wind from me. Why would he do that? Control, Uncle Warren said simply. Richard can't stand that he can't direct your life the way he directs everything else. A text message pinged on my phone. It was from my friend Taryn, with a screenshot from Amber's private Instagram story, a photo of Amber kissing Alex, my ex-boyfriend from college, the one who had broken my heart 2 years ago. The caption read, "Sometimes, the best things come to those who wait. Sorry not sorry, Em." Before I could process this new betrayal, voices drifted up from the driveway below my window. We could get $5,000 for it, easy, Tyler was saying. Grandma's not around to know the difference. Morgan loves that car. My father replied, but you're right, no sense letting it sit around. Call that dealer friend of yours. They were planning to sell my grandmother's gift to me, the Toyota she had given me when I graduated college. The car had sentimental value far beyond its modest market price. I stepped away from the window, my mind racing. The extent of their betrayal was breathtaking, not just throwing me out but systematically erasing my options, my reputation, and my connections. They were salting the earth behind me. At that moment, something hardened within me. I had been maintaining my secret out of some misguided hope for genuine family connection. Now I saw clearly these people weren't just indifferent to me, they were actively working against me. I decided I would leave as they wanted, but I wouldn't reveal my wealth as some dramatic mic drop moment. That would be too simple, too quickly forgotten. No, this revelation would require strategic timing. Uncle Warren watched my face change. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time I stopped underestimating how far they'll go, I replied, pulling out my real phone, the one with secure access to my actual accounts. And time they stopped underestimating me. I checked into the Ridgeview Inn, a modest hotel 20 minutes from my parents' house. The room was simple but clean, nothing like my usual accommodations, but perfect for staying under the radar. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, I opened my laptop and removed the family-friendly screensaver to reveal my actual desktop. I entered a series of passwords, and the digital command center of my financial empire appeared. How had I built this life in secret? It began during my sophomore year at MIT. While other students socialized, I spent nights coding in the computer lab, developing what would become ARIA, Adaptive Reasoning Intelligence Algorithm. Unlike existing AI systems, ARIA could make intuitive leaps, connecting disparate data points in ways that mimicked human insight but at exponential speeds. By junior year, I had a working prototype. By senior year, I had partnered with Zoe Chang, a brilliant marketing student who immediately recognized ARIA's potential. Together, we founded Hayes Chang Technologies. Within 18 months, every major tech company was bidding for our startup. The night before signing the acquisition papers with Nexus Technologies, Zoe and I sat on the floor of our tiny office, sharing a bottle of champagne. "You realize this changes everything," she said. "After tomorrow, you're not just Morgan Hayes anymore. That's why I need your help." I told her. I want to keep this quiet from my family. Just for a while. Zoe didn't understand at first. Who wouldn't want to share becoming a billionaire? But she had met my family once, during graduation, and had witnessed my father's dismissive attitude, my brother's competitive barbs, and my mother's passive enablement. Okay. She had finally agreed. Your money, your rules. But promise me this isn't about seeking their approval. Some people can't give what they don't have. 3 years later, her words echoed as I dialed her number. They finally did it, I said when she answered. Kicked me out completely. Want me to send the jet? Zoe asked without hesitation. As my business partner and friend, she was one of the few people who knew both versions of my life. Not yet. I need to handle this carefully. After talking through options with Zoe, I called Rachel Sullivan, my financial advisor who managed my billions with ruthless efficiency. I need information on Hayes Electronics, I told her, referring to my father's company. Your father's business? Give me an hour, Rachel replied. Next, I reached out to Benjamin Porter, my grandmother's lawyer. When she passed away 2 years ago, Benjamin had handled her modest estate, including setting up the trust fund my family had just emptied. What they did wasn't just morally questionable, Morgan, it may be legally actionable, Benjamin explained after hearing my story. Your grandmother's trust specified that money was for your exclusive use. Let's hold off on legal action for now, I replied, ideas forming. But I'd like you to prepare documentation of all their financial maneuvers regarding my assets. As I formulated my plan, my personal phone rang. Lily Foster, my best friend since kindergarten and one of the few connections to my hometown I genuinely valued. Lily worked as a nurse at the local hospital and had no idea about my wealth. Morgan? Are you okay? I just ran into your mom at the grocery store, and she was telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown and had to go away for treatment. The lies had already begun. I'm fine, Lily. Just family drama. Can you meet me at the Ridgeview Inn? Room 118. An hour later, Lily sat stunned as I explained my family's ultimatum, though not my secret wealth. That's horrible, she said, her honest face flushed with indignation. You can stay with me until you figure things out. Her genuine offer of help given when she thought I had nothing warmed me. This was what real connection looked like. Thanks, but I've got a plan, I assured her. As Lily left, Rachel called back with information that shifted my thinking entirely. Hayes Electronics is in trouble, she reported. Your father's mismanagement has run it into the ground. They've lost major contracts, and there are rumors about cutting corners on quality control. The company needs a capital infusion of at least $5 million to stay afloat. I felt a cold smile form. My father, the successful businessman who had dismissed my career choices, was failing. The family wealth that had fueled his sense of superiority was evaporating. They didn't just want me gone because I was a disappointment. They wanted me gone because they couldn't afford their image of perfect family success anymore. This wasn't just about teaching them a lesson now. This was about systematically dismantling the facade they had built, the same way they had tried to dismantle my options. Rachel, I said, I want you to create a shell corporation. We're going to make some strategic acquisitions in my hometown. The path forward crystallized in my mind. I wouldn't just walk away, and I wouldn't simply reveal my wealth. I would orchestrate a comprehensive lesson about value, loyalty, and consequences. By morning, the pieces were in motion. The family that thought they were discarding a burden would learn I was anything but. 3 days after being thrown out of my childhood home, I sat in the back of a black town car with tinted windows, watching the Welcome to Lakeside sign pass by. I hardly recognized my reflection in the car window. Gone was the casual, understated Morgan my family knew. In her place was Margaret Hayward, consultant for Pinnacle Investments, in a tailored charcoal suit, subtle makeup, hair styled differently, and light brown contact lenses disguising my natural blue eyes. The property paperwork is complete, Miss Hayward, my driver said, using my pseudonym. You now own the old Westfield building downtown and 3 commercial lots on Main Street, through my shell corporation Aria Ventures. Named after my algorithm, I had begun quietly purchasing key properties around Lakeside. The historic Westfield building stood directly across from my father's company headquarters. It would be the perfect location for what I had planned. My first week in town was productive. Contractors began renovations on my properties, generating local buzz about a mysterious investor taking interest in the struggling downtown area. I arranged meetings with local business leaders, presenting myself as a consultant evaluating the region for potential investment. On my 5th day back in town, I encountered my first real test, a direct meeting with my brother Tyler. He had reached out to Margaret Hayward through the local business association, eager to present Hayes Electronics as an investment opportunity. We met at Lakeside Coffee House, a place I had frequented in high school. Tyler arrived 15 minutes late, already a power move in his mind. "Miss Hayward, thank you for making time," he said, extending his hand. His eyes slid over me assessingly, seeing only an attractive businesswoman, not his sister. "Tyler Hayes, VP of Operations at Hayes Electronics. Pleasure," I replied, lowering my voice slightly from my natural tone. "I understand your company is seeking investment partners." For the next 30 minutes, I listened as Tyler outlined an entirely fictional version of Hayes Electronics' market position, exaggerating their prospects and minimizing their problems. "And your sister? I heard she recently left town suddenly." I inquired casually, testing how they were spinning my departure to outsiders. Tyler's face darkened. "Unfortunately, my sister has been dealing with some personal issues, mental health concerns. Our family tried to help for years, but sometimes professional intervention is necessary." The casual cruelty with which he dismissed me, painting me as unstable, rather than admitting they had thrown me out, confirmed I had made the right decision. "She actually caused significant problems for our company," Tyler continued, apparently unable to resist bad-mouthing me even to a stranger. "Borrowed money she never repaid, created scenes at company functions. It's been a relief, honestly, to focus on business without the family drama." Each lie fueled my resolve. "Family businesses can be complicated," I replied neutrally. "Speaking of complications, I heard Hayes Electronics recently lost the Westlake contract." Tyler's smile faltered. "Where did you hear that?" "I make it my business to be informed, Mr. Hayes. Just as I'm informed about the quality control issues with your latest product line, and the 3 executives who left your company last quarter." The blood drained from Tyler's face. These were not public knowledge. The family had been hiding the company's troubles. "That's proprietary information," he stammered. "Indeed. As is the fact that your father leveraged your family home to secure operating capital last month." Tyler's shock confirmed my suspicion. Richard hadn't told the family about remortgaging the house. The facade was cracking from within. After leaving a shaken Tyler, I met with Catherine Baxter, owner of Baxter Technologies, Hayes Electronics' main local competitor, and my father's business rival for 20 years. I had arranged the meeting as Margaret, but with a different purpose. "Mrs. Baxter, thank you for meeting me," I said as we sat in her modest but immaculate office. "Call me Catherine," she replied, studying me carefully, "though I'm curious why a consultant for Pinnacle Investments wants to meet with me rather than Richard Hayes. Hayes usually the one courting outside investors." "I believe in thorough research," I replied, "and sometimes competitors provide the most honest assessment of a company's position." Over the next hour, Catherine revealed the truth about Hayes Electronics, my father's corner cutting, his mistreatment of employees, and his increasingly desperate business tactics. Richard fired his head engineer last year, brilliant woman named Janet Kim, because she questioned his decision to use substandard components. Catherine explained, "Janet works for me now, and we've developed superior products as a result." "Would you say ethical concerns are common with Hayes Electronics?" I asked. Catherine hesitated before opening a drawer and pulling out a folder. "This stays between us, but these are copies of complaints filed against Hayes Electronics by former employees. Wrongful termination, harassment, even allegations of intellectual property theft. Nothing stuck because Richard has friends on the town council and at the local paper." As I left Catherine's office with copies of the documents, I spotted a familiar figure across the street. Amber, my stepsister, shopping at the boutique where she spent my father's money. She glanced my way, a flicker of almost recognition crossing her face before she dismissed me as a stranger. I ducked into my waiting car, heart racing slightly. The disguise had worked, but it was a reminder to be careful. My plan required staying undetected until the perfect moment. By week's end, Aria Ventures had acquired a significant minority stake in Hayes Electronics through discrete purchases of publicly traded shares. I now owned 20% of my father's company, enough to have a voice in major decisions but not enough to trigger disclosure requirements that might reveal my identity. Phase 1 was complete. The pieces were on the board, and my family remained oblivious to my presence. They had discarded me without a second thought, believing I would disappear quietly to Alaska. They were about to discover how wrong they were. 2 months after my birthday disaster, I sat in my temporary office in the renovated Westfield building, watching Hayes Electronics headquarters through my window. The Margaret Hayward identity had taken root in lakeside business circles, allowing me to observe my family's unraveling from a safe distance. The first visible crack appeared when Hayes Electronics announced an organizational restructuring that eliminated 30 positions, including my brother Tyler's recently acquired junior partnership. Though he maintained his VP title, the company newsletter, which I now received as a shareholder, revealed his responsibilities had been significantly reduced. I watched through binoculars as Tyler stormed out of the building that afternoon, kicking a trash can before speeding away in his BMW. The careful image he had cultivated the successful son following in his father's footsteps was showing visible fractures. Aria Ventures had continued strategic moves, acquiring companies that supplied Hayes Electronics, and then raising prices or requiring stricter payment terms. We purchased the mortgage on the Hayes family home from the bank, becoming their landlord without their knowledge. We even acquired the country club where my father played golf with business associates, immediately raising membership fees beyond what he could comfortably afford. Each move was calculated not to destroy them, but to apply steady pressure to create the same sense of decreasing options they had tried to impose on me. One Tuesday morning, my secure phone rang. It was Rachel, my financial advisor. "The takeover rumors are circulating," she reported. "Hayes Electronics stock dropped 12% this morning. Your father has called 3 emergency board meetings in the past week. Any indication they suspect my involvement?" I asked. "None. They're looking at Baxter Technologies as the potential hostile takeover threat, given your arrangements with Catherine." I had provided Catherine Baxter with favorable financing to expand her business, which she had used to recruit top talent away from Hayes Electronics. My father, paranoid as ever, had assumed she was positioning for a takeover, rather than simply growing her company. Later that afternoon, Lily called with updates from town. "Your parents put their house on the market yesterday," she reported. "Your mom came into the hospital for a prescription for anxiety medication. She looked terrible, Morgan. A twinge of something not quite regret, but awareness of the real human impact of my actions passed through me. How's my father handling things?" "Not well. He got into a shouting match with Mr. Wilson at the Chamber of Commerce meeting. Everyone's talking about it." I pulled up my stepsister's Instagram page, once filled with shopping hauls and vacation photos, now noticeably quieter. Her latest post showed her selling designer clothes on a consignment app. The caption read, "Simplifying life, number minimalism, number new beginnings." The financial pressure was clearly affecting the entire household. That evening, I had dinner at LaRue's, an upscale restaurant downtown. Through the window, I spotted my father and mother at a table across the street, at a much more modest establishment than their usual dining choice. They weren't speaking to each other, both staring at their phones with tense expressions. As I observed them, Mrs. Peterson, our former neighbor of 30 years, approached their table. I couldn't hear the exchange, but her animated gestures and my mother's increasingly uncomfortable expression suggested it wasn't pleasant. Mrs. Peterson had always been kind to me, one of the few adults who noticed my father's dismissive attitude. The next day, I received a report from the private investigator I had hired. He had placed a listening device in my parents' new realtor's office. "They're underwater on the mortgage," the investigator explained. "Your father took out a second line of credit last year without telling your mother. They're asking about short sales now." The Lakeside Gazette ran a front-page story about the troubles at Hayes Electronics, quoting an anonymous consultant about quality control issues and management problems. The consultant was, of course, Margaret Hayward, giving carefully selected information to the reporter. Community sentiment began shifting. Longtime employees who had been laid off shared their stories. Suppliers who had been squeezed by my father's aggressive tactics spoke out. The curated image of Richard Hayes as a respected business leader and family man began to crack. "Your father had some kind of public meltdown at Vincenzo's last night," Lily reported during our weekly coffee meeting. "Started shouting about conspiracies and how everyone was against him. Your mother tried to calm him down, but he stormed out and left her there without a ride home." I nodded, absorbing the information, without revealing my role in orchestrating these pressures. "Have you heard from them?" Lily asked carefully. "Since everything, not a word," I replied truthfully. They made their decision about my worth to the family quite clear. That night, checking my secondary phone, the one my family knew, I found 15 missed calls from my mother, and a series of increasingly desperate voicemails. "Morgan, it's Mom. Please call us back. Your father." Things are difficult right now. Morgan, we need to talk about your grandmother's car. There's been a misunderstanding. Morgan, please. I know we weren't supportive enough, but we're your family. We need you. Each message carefully avoided an actual apology or admission of wrongdoing. Each framed their reaching out in terms of what I could do for them, not genuine remorse for how they had treated me. The final message was the most revealing. Morgan, if you found work somewhere, maybe you could loan us some money? Just until your father's company situation stabilizes. Family helps family, remember. Family helps family. The same family that had emptied my savings account, canceled my health insurance, and given me a one-way ticket to Alaska now wanted my help without acknowledging any of their actions. It confirmed what I had always suspected. To them, I wasn't a person with inherent value. I was only worth what I could provide. I deleted the messages without responding, and returned to finalizing the next phase of my plan. The controlled demolition of my family's facade was proceeding according to plan when the first unexpected complication arose. Uncle Warren, my father's brother and the one relative who had shown me genuine concern, was admitted to the hospital with severe pneumonia. I received the news from Lily, who worked in the hospital's intensive care unit. It's pretty serious, Morgan. Hez asking for you. This presented a dilemma. Visiting Uncle Warren would mean risking exposure before I was ready. More importantly, it raised moral questions about the broader impact of my actions. I made arrangements to have the best pulmonologist in the state transferred to Lakeside Hospital, paying for the specialist through anonymous channels. Then I visited after hours, wearing a surgical mask as precaution against infection and to help disguise my identity. There you are, Uncle Warren said weakly when I entered his room. I was worried you'd really gone to Alaska. I would never disappear without telling you, I assured him, taking his hand. Your father's falling apart, he said without preamble. The company, their finances, it's all collapsing, I heard. I replied neutrally. Uncle Warren studied my face. You don't seem surprised. Or concerned. I hesitated, weighing how much to reveal. Uncle Warren had always been perceptive. They threw me away, Uncle Warren, emptied my accounts, canceled my insurance, destroyed my reputation in town. Why should I care what happens to them now? He sighed. Because revenge doesn't heal the original wound, Morgan. Trust me on that. Before I could respond, he continued. Speaking of your father, he came asking me for money yesterday. Said he needed $50,000 for a temporary business setback. And I told him I'd just spent my savings on Casey's college fund. He coughed painfully. The look on his face. It was like he couldn't comprehend someone choosing their child's education over his business. Casey was Uncle Warren's 16-year-old daughter, my cousin, who had always looked up to me. How is Casey doing? I asked. Uncle Warren's face darkened. Not great. Kids at school are giving her a hard time about everything happening with your dad's company. 15 families lost jobs in the last round of layoffs. People are angry. This was an unintended consequence. I hadn't considered innocent family members suffering collateral damage from my calculated revenge. Casey had done nothing wrong. Yet she was facing social isolation because of her connection to my father. The moral complexity deepened the following day when I learned my mother had begun selling family heirlooms to cover expenses. Among the items sold was my grandmother's antique silver tea service, which had been explicitly promised to me in her will. She got $5,000 for it at Lakeside Antiques. Lily reported. I only know because my mom saw her there. That same afternoon, my business partner Zoe called from San Francisco with concerns of her own. The board is asking questions about your extended personal time, she said. And I'm getting worried too. It's been 2 months of you focusing on this revenge plan. Is it really worth it? They tried to erase me, Zoe. I replied, staring out at Hayes Electronics headquarters. They need to understand there are consequences. I get that, but at what point does making them pay become as toxic to you as what they did? You've built an amazing life, Morgan. How long will you put that on hold to teach them a lesson they might never truly learn? Her question lingered uncomfortably after we hung up. Was I becoming obsessed? Was I allowing my family's worst traits, vindictiveness, manipulation, conditional love to take root in me? These questions became more urgent when a local business reporter, Jason Chen, began investigating the mysterious investor buying up lakeside properties. Miss Hayward, he said when he cornered me outside my office building. I find it interesting that Aria Ventures was incorporated just days after Morgan Hayes supposedly left for Alaska. and that your company's name bears remarkable similarity to the ARIA algorithm developed by Morgan Hayes during her time at MIT. Many companies use variations of common names, Mr. Chen. I replied smoothly. I'm afraid you're creating connections where none exist. He smiled. Perhaps. But isn't it also interesting that you arrived in Lakeside exactly when the Hayes family began experiencing financial difficulties? Almost as if someone wanted to watch them struggle up close. The reporter was too close to the truth. I would need to accelerate my timeline, or risk premature exposure. That decision became imperative the following day when I visited Uncle Warren again, only to find my cousin Casey already in the room. She looked up as I entered, her eyes widening in recognition despite my disguise. Morgan? Is that you? I froze, calculating options. Before I could respond, Uncle Warren intervened. Casey, this is Margaret, a business associate checking on me. Would you mind getting me some water? After she left, Uncle Warren fixed me with a stern look. You're Margaret Hayward, aren't you? The mysterious investor everyone's talking about. There was no point denying it. Yes. Are you behind what's happening to your father's company? Not all of it, I admitted. He created most of his problems himself. I just accelerated some consequences. Uncle Warren closed his eyes briefly. Morgan, your father deserves a reckoning for how he has treated you and others. But this elaborate scheme, this hidden identity, it's not you. Maybe it is now, I replied, unsettled by how natural the deception had become. As I left the hospital, I encountered another complication: my father. Entering the lobby, I ducked behind a column, heart racing as he passed within feet of me. He looked haggard, the confident strut replaced by a weary shuffle. For a brief moment, I felt an unwelcome pang of empathy. That emotion was tested further when I returned to my hotel to find a message that my father had approached ARIA Ventures, my shell company, for an emergency business loan of $2 million. The irony was almost too perfect. The daughter he had discarded as worthless was now the financial savior he was unwittingly appealing to. As I considered whether to reject the loan request outright or use it as leverage, Casey texted me on my personal number, the first direct contact from any family member to acknowledge they knew I hadn't gone to Alaska. I know you're still in town, she wrote. Kids at school are saying horrible things about our family. They say Uncle Richard stole money and Aunt Stephanie is having a breakdown. I'm scared, Morgan. Whatever's happening, please make it stop. The simple plea from my 16-year-old cousin hit harder than all my mother's manipulative voicemails. Casey was innocent in this war, yet she was suffering because of my actions, just as I had suffered because of my parents' actions. Was I perpetuating the same cycle of harm I had resented in my family? Before I could fully process this question, a final complication emerged. Tyler had spotted me leaving my hotel and followed me. As I entered a coffee shop, he confronted me in the back hallway near the restrooms. Morgan? What the hell? His eyes narrowed, taking in my disguise. You're supposed to be in Alaska. Why are you dressed like that? The carefully constructed plan was unraveling. I needed to decide quickly, continue the deception, or begin the revelation on my terms. Tyler's discovery threatened to derail everything. Standing in that coffee shop hallway, I made a split-second decision to pivot rather than retreat. Hello, Tyler, I said, dropping the Margaret Hayward voice, surprised to see me. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. What are you doing in town? And why are you dressed like some corporate executive? Because I am an executive, I replied. Though that's hardly the most interesting part of what you don't know about me. Before our conversation could continue, my phone buzzed a message from Zoe, warning me that ARIA Ventures' activities had attracted attention from someone else. Kristen Davis, a former intern at my tech company who had moved back to her hometown of Lakeside. She had recognized my investment patterns and was asking questions. We need to talk privately, I told Tyler. Not here. He followed me to my car, clearly calculating his options. Mom and Dad think you're in Alaska. They've been trying to reach you. I know. I've been ignoring them, the same way they ignored me for years. I directed my driver to take us to my temporary office in the Westfield building. Tyler's expression changed from confusion to shock as we entered the modern, expansive space with views directly into Hayes Electronics headquarters. What exactly is going on, Morgan? He demanded. What is all this? I considered how much to reveal. Tyler and I had never been close. He had always been too busy competing with me for our father's approval. But his position in the family made him a potential ally or a dangerous opponent. I'm successful, Tyler. Far more successful than Dad ever imagined. You're a freelancer, he scoffed. the reflexive dismissal so ingrained he couldn't help himself. "I'm worth $2.4 billion. I stated flatly. He laughed, the sound hollow and uncertain. "Right. And I'm Jeff Bezos." I turned my laptop toward him, logging into my primary investment account. His laughter died as he saw the balance, just one of my many accounts. "This is impossible," he whispered. "How?" "I sold my tech company 3 years ago. I developed an AI algorithm that revolutionized predictive analytics. Every major tech company uses my technology now." His face cycled through disbelief, shock, and finally calculation. "Does Dad know?" "No one in the family knows except you. Right now." The wheels were visibly turning behind Tyler's eyes. "So all this time, when Dad was saying you were wasting your potential, I was building a billion-dollar company, yes. Why keep it secret? Why let us think you were struggling?" "Because I wanted to know if any of you valued me without the money," I said simply. "You didn't." Tyler's expression shifted again, this time to something resembling his old confidence. "Morgan, this changes everything. With your resources, we could save Dad's company, rebuild everything better than before. The family would be stronger than ever." It was exactly the response I had expected. Tyler saw my worth only in terms of what it could do for them, not what they had done to me. "I don't think you understand the situation," I replied. "I'm not here to save the family. I'm the reason Hayes Electronics is failing." The blood drained from his face. "What?" "Aria Ventures, my company, has been systematically applying pressure to Dad's business for months. The property acquisitions, the supply chain issues, the hostile takeover rumors, that was all me." "You're destroying your own family? For what revenge?" His voice rose in indignation. "For consequences," I corrected. "Actions have them. Dad taught me that, remember." Tyler stood, pacing the office. "This is insane. You need to stop this now. Do you know what you're doing to Mom? To all of us?" "I know exactly what I'm doing. The same thing you all did to me, creating a situation where I had no good options, no support, no safety net." For a moment, something like understanding flickered across Tyler's face. Then his expression hardened. "I want in," he said. "Excuse me, I want a deal. Help me set up my own business, separate from Dad's company. Give me a fresh start with enough capital to succeed, and I'll help you with whatever you're planning next." It was breathtaking in its selfishness, and so perfectly aligned with the family values I had grown up with. Always looking out for number one. Always ready to switch sides when advantage called. "And why would I trust you, Tyler? You've never been on my side before." "Because I'm offering something you clearly want, an insider in the family. I can tell you everything they're planning. Everything they're saying about you." The offer was tempting from a strategic perspective, but something about it felt wrong, like I would be corrupting myself by engaging in the same transactional relationships my family specialized in. "I'll think about it," I said non-committally. Tyler reached for his phone. "Let me give you my new number so we can—" I caught his wrist. "What are you doing?" A guilty flash crossed his face. "Just getting my phone." But I had seen the recording app already open on his screen. "You're recording this conversation. Morgan, listen." I took his phone, stopped the recording, and deleted it. "You were going to use this against me, or sell it to Dad." He didn't bother denying it. "Can you blame me? You've been systematically destroying our family. Someone needs to stop you. Get out," I said quietly. "This isn't over," Tyler warned as my security team escorted him from the building. "Dad needs to know what you're doing." Within an hour, my worst fears were confirmed. Lily called in a panic. "Morgan, something big is happening. Your entire family just had some kind of emergency meeting at your parents' house. Tyler was there looking smug, and your father was shouting loud enough for neighbors to hear." "Did you catch what they were saying?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "Just fragments. Something about dealing with Morgan and before she destroys everything." So Tyler had told them something, perhaps not the full truth, but enough to make them see me as a threat. My careful plan for a controlled revelation was crumbling. That evening, 3 separate challenges converged. First, the reporter Jason Chen published a piece connecting Aria Ventures to recent Hayes Electronics troubles, speculating about a personal vendetta driving the hostile business tactics. Second, my former intern Kristen posted on her local business blog that she had identified Margaret Hayward as Morgan Hayes in disguise, complete with side-by-side photo analysis. Third, and most concerning, my security team reported that my father had hired private investigators to track Margaret Hayward's movements, and was meeting with his lawyers about potential legal action against Aria Ventures. My carefully constructed plan was collapsing. The family that had dismissed me as worthless was now mobilizing all their remaining resources against me, seeing me as a threat to neutralize rather than a daughter to reconcile with. I sat in my hotel room that night, weighing options. I could retreat to San Francisco, abandoning the revenge plan but preserving my anonymity. I could accelerate my takeover of Hayes Electronics, using my financial power to crush them completely. Or I could do what I had planned all along, reveal myself on my terms, but now with much less control over the narrative. Uncle Warren's words echoed. Revenge doesn't heal the original wound. Casey's plea. Whatever's happening, please make it stop. And Zoe's question. At what point does making them pay become as toxic to you as what they did? I had come to Lakeside to teach my family a lesson about value and consequences. But perhaps the most important lesson was one I needed to learn myself. I couldn't heal my family's dysfunction by mirroring it, even in the name of justice. The time for shadows and proxies was over. If my family wanted to deal with Morgan, they would indeed, but the real Morgan, not the caricature they had created or dismissed. I picked up my phone and made arrangements for the final act of this family drama. The Lakeside Grand Hotel's ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors. As the town's only luxury venue, it was the natural choice for what the invitations had described as an evening with Aria Ventures, investing in Lakeside's future. Every business leader in town had received an invitation, including Richard Hayes and the entire executive team of Hayes Electronics. The promise of meeting the mysterious investor behind Aria Ventures and potentially accessing much-needed capital was too tempting for my financially desperate father to refuse. I watched from a side room as guests arrived in their finest attire. My mother entered wearing a dress I recognized from 10 years ago, another sign of their financial strain. Tyler followed, scanning the room with nervous energy. Amber came separately, immediately gravitating toward the wealthiest single men in attendance. My father arrived last, his once commanding presence diminished by months of business setbacks and stress. Still, he worked the room with practiced charm, shaking hands and laughing too loudly, the performance of success even as his company crumbled. At precisely 8 o'clock, the lights dimmed slightly, and Rachel, my financial advisor, approached the podium. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us tonight. As Lakeside's business community faces unprecedented challenges, Aria Ventures has recognized unique opportunities for growth and revitalization in your historic town. The crowd murmured appreciatively, my father leaning forward with naked hope on his face. Over the past months, Rachel continued, we have acquired significant properties and interests in Lakeside, with plans for substantial further investment. Tonight, we are pleased to finally introduce you to the founder and CEO of Aria Ventures, the visionary behind this initiative. This was the moment I had been planning for months, my calculated reveal, designed for maximum impact. I smoothed my designer gown, a striking sapphire blue that matched my eyes, now free of the brown contacts I'd worn as Margaret Hayward. My hair was styled in its natural way, and I wore my grandmother's pearls, the one heirloom I had managed to keep from being sold. Taking a deep breath, I stepped onto the stage. A collective gasp rose from the assembled guests. My father froze mid-handshake, his face draining of color. My mother's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Good evening, I said into the microphone, my voice steady. For those who don't know me, I'm Morgan Hayes. The room erupted in whispers. I waited for them to subside before continuing. 3 years ago, I founded Hayes Chang Technologies and developed the ARIA algorithm, Adaptive Reasoning Intelligence Algorithm. When we sold the company to Nexus Technologies, I became one of the youngest self-made billionaires in America. On the screens around the ballroom, images appeared, news headlines about the acquisition, photos of me with tech industry leaders, the Forbes profile that had named me to their 30 under 30 list. My net worth currently stands at approximately $2.4 billion. Aria Ventures manages my investment portfolio, which includes significant holdings in technology, real estate, and most recently, several businesses here in Lakeside. I looked directly at my father, whose expression had transformed from shock to a calculation I recognized all too well, including a controlling interest in Hayes Electronics. The room fell completely silent. Many of you are wondering why I kept this success a secret from my hometown, and especially from my family. Others may be connecting the dots about recent business developments in Lakeside. I gestured, and new images appeared on the screens, side-by-side photos of Margaret Hayward and myself, revealing the disguise I had worn for months. On my 28th birthday, my family presented me with a one-way ticket to Alaska and informed me I was no longer welcome in their home. They emptied my savings account, canceled my insurance, and systematically destroyed my local reputation, all while believing I was a struggling freelancer with no options. My mother had sunk into a chair, her hand covering her mouth. Tyler stared at the floor. Amber looked almost impressed. What they didn't know was that I could have purchased their house, their company, and this entire town, with the interest from my investment accounts. I paused, letting the magnitude of their miscalculation sink in. Tonight isn't about humiliation or revenge, although I considered both paths. Tonight is about truth and new beginnings. I'm officially announcing the Hayes Innovation Foundation, with an initial endowment of $50 million dedicated to supporting entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds here in Lakeside. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then gathering strength as business leaders recognized the opportunity this represented for the struggling town. The foundation will prioritize ethical business practices, community investment, and sustainable growth values I found sadly lacking in the business education I received growing up. My father flinched visibly. I continued. As for Hayes Electronics, Aria Ventures will be restructuring the company completely. Richard Hayes will be stepping down as CEO, effective immediately. The murmurs grew louder. My father started toward the stage, but security personnel, my security, subtly blocked his path. The new management team will be led by Janet Kim, whose innovative designs were rejected by previous leadership. All employees who were wrongfully terminated will be offered their positions back with appropriate compensation for damages. I gestured again, and the screens displayed documentation records of my family's financial maneuvers regarding my assets, evidence of my father's unethical business practices, screenshots of the lies they had spread about my mental health. Transparency matters in both business and family. Every person in this room can now see exactly how the Hayes family treats those they consider dispensable. The community's reaction was palpable, shock giving way to understanding as they realized how thoroughly my family had deceived them about who I was. Catherine Baxter, my father's business rival, raised her glass in my direction. Uncle Warren, who had been released from the hospital that morning, gave me a complex look, part pride, part concern. As I concluded my presentation, I noticed my family attempting different approaches to the new reality. My father pushed forward, clearly intent on establishing a private conversation where he could attempt to manipulate this situation to his advantage. My mother dabbed theatrical tears, already constructing a narrative where she had always supported my dreams. Tyler's expression had transformed into one of calculated networking, undoubtedly planning how to position himself as my ally. Only Amber seemed honest in her reaction, pure, unfiltered anger at having misjudged me so completely. When I finished speaking, I stepped down from the stage and was immediately surrounded by well-wishers and business leaders eager to establish connections. I navigated through them until I reached my family, who had clustered together in a defensive formation. "Morgan," my father began, his voice suddenly warm with forced joviality. "This is incredible news. We always knew you were destined for great things. We should talk privately about the company transition. There's nothing to discuss," I interrupted calmly. "The paperwork is already filed, but we're family," my mother interjected, reaching for my hand. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. "You made your definition of family very clear on my birthday," I replied. "I'm simply honoring your decision." "This is ridiculous," Tyler hissed. "You can't just take the company. Dad built that business." "Actually, I can. And I did legally and transparently, which is more than I can say for how you handled my grandmother's trust fund or car." As they struggled to formulate responses, Uncle Warren approached with Casey beside him. "I think that's enough family reunion for one evening," he said firmly. "Morgan, the foundation announcement is inspiring. Your grandmother would be proud." His simple validation, acknowledging my accomplishment without trying to claim credit or benefit, highlighted everything that had been missing from my relationship with my parents. As security discreetly escorted my protesting family toward the exit, I circulated through the ballroom, connecting with community members who were seeing me clearly for the first time, not as Richard Hayes' disappointing daughter, but as a successful businesswoman, offering genuine opportunity to a town that had largely dismissed me. By evening's end, the narrative had been reclaimed. The family that had tried to write me out of their story had instead become a footnote in mine. 6 months after the gala revelation, I stood at the window of my San Francisco penthouse, watching the fog roll in over the Golden Gate Bridge. The Hayes Innovation Foundation headquarters in Lakeside had opened the previous week, a modern glass building on the site of the old Hayes Electronics factory, symbolizing transparency and new beginnings. My life had found a new equilibrium. I divided my time between San Francisco, where I worked with Zoe on new technology initiatives, and brief visits to Lakeside to oversee foundation projects. The constant tension of maintaining my secret, the energy expended on revenge, had been redirected toward genuine innovation and community investment. Hayes Electronics, now simply Hayes Tech, had been completely transformed under Janet Kim's leadership. The focus shifted to ethical manufacturing practices and cutting-edge design, with profits surpassing the company's performance under my father's management within 4 months. My family's reactions to the new reality had been predictably varied. My father initially threatened legal action, claiming I had orchestrated a hostile takeover through deception. His lawyers quickly informed him that all my actions had been perfectly legal, and that pursuing the matter would only further expose his own questionable business practices. When litigation failed, he attempted reconciliation, sending expensive gifts, writing emails full of belated praise for my accomplishments, even showing up unannounced at my San Francisco office, with business proposals that would conveniently position him as a consultant to my company. Each attempt revealed the same fundamental flaw: he saw me as a resource to exploit, not a daughter to love. My mother's approach was more emotionally manipulative. She sent daily messages about how proud she had always been, how she had secretly supported my dreams against my father's wishes. When these rewrites of history failed to move me, she progressed to health scares, vague references to depression, and finally, tearful phone calls about how I was destroying the family by not forgiving them. The simple truth that forgiveness was possible but would require genuine acknowledgement of their actions and sincere remorse seemed beyond her emotional capacity. Tyler surprised me with the most honest response. After 2 months of silence, he requested a meeting, arrived alone, and actually listened when I explained how their treatment had affected me. "I was awful to you," he admitted. "Competing for Dad's approval was like fighting for scraps at a table where no one ever got enough. I made you the enemy because it was easier than admitting the whole system was broken." While not enough to immediately repair our relationship, his willingness to acknowledge reality created potential for future healing. Amber had taken a different path entirely, leveraging her connection to me for social media fame, positioning herself as the stepsister of a billionaire, while carefully avoiding any mention of her role in my family's treatment of me. The commodification of our relationship was so on-brand that I found it almost amusing. Uncle Warren had become a trusted advisor for the foundation, his practical wisdom balancing my technical expertise. Casey had blossomed under the foundation's college scholarship program, discovering her own passion for environmental engineering. My connection with Lily had strengthened, her genuine friendship standing in stark contrast to the conditional relationships I had grown up with. She now headed the foundation's community health initiative, implementing programs that would serve Lakeside residents for generations. As for me, the journey from seeking revenge to finding purpose had transformed something fundamental in my understanding of wealth and family. The billionaire status that my parents now desperately wanted to claim connection to was never what defined my worth. It was merely a tool, one that could destroy or create, depending on the intention behind it. The most valuable currency wasn't in my investment accounts, but in the authentic connections I had formed with Zoe, with Lily, with Uncle Warren and Casey, with the community members who approached our foundation with innovative ideas and genuine passion. I had learned that family was defined by consistent care and mutual respect, not by blood or legal documentation. The family I had been born into had failed that definition, but the family I had chosen and built exceeded it in every way. On my 29th birthday, instead of a tense dinner ending with a one-way ticket, I celebrated surrounded by these chosen family members. We gathered at a beachside restaurant in Malibu, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "A toast," Zoe proposed, raising her glass. "To Morgan, who could have used her billions to destroy but chose to build instead. And to second chances," Uncle Warren added, "not for those who haven't earned them, but for communities and dreams that deserve them." As glasses clinked around the table, I realized the most unexpected outcome of this journey: the freedom from seeking validation from those incapable of giving it. The one-way ticket my father had given me, intended as rejection, had instead been liberation, forcing me to finally recognize what had always been true. My worth had never been determined by their assessment, and neither would my future. So what would you do if someone who threw you away suddenly discovered your true value? Would you seek revenge or build something new? Comment below with your thoughts. If you enjoyed this story of family drama and sweet justice, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs a reminder that rejection can sometimes be the universe's way of redirecting you to your true path. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the family you choose is infinitely more valuable than the one you're born into.